For 15 years of my life, I used to smoke, I used to drink, I did drugs, I used to eat lard right out of a can occasionally.
I met Marc in the early 80s. I was one of a handful of people, there weren't many, who could tolerate him.
I couldn't draw, no matter how many Conans I did, and that was part of the beginning of the podcast.
It's happening. I'm Marc Maron. This is my podcast.
Yeah, there's that Lou Reed line, I accept the newfound man. And that is what Marc became.
You started this in your garage, right?
Yes, sir. I have a very short commute to work. You know, we've all been able to live our dreams as, mediocre radio personalities on our own terms.
So to jump in, here's a hypothetical question, and this is hypothetical. If a space alien lands on planet Earth and asks you to describe the entity, and this is hypothetical, which is Marc Maron, how would you describe it to said space alien?
Grumpy, sensitive. I'm gonna go. He's gonna hate this. That's assuming he's gonna watch this. But
Don't undersell me.
I'm gonna say sensitive curmudgeon. Sensitive curmudgeon is my very brief descriptor of a guy who's seen it all, been around the block a couple times, and knows more than most how to create comedy out of tragedy, not just personal tragedy, but the things we see happening in the world around us more and more, increasingly every day. And he just gives voice to a certain frustration that a lot of us are feeling, and almost succeeds in spite of himself. He's, as I mentioned, a very emotional, sensitive guy, and you see it all. He pulls no punches. He leaves no stone unturned, not only talking about politics and, again, the world around us, but himself. He's a very, very honest comedian. Much to his, again, he gets in his own way sometimes, but the earnestness and the honesty is always there. So he's someone we can look to as embracing our faults and really just trying to laugh at all of it to get through.
Yes, that is Julie Seabaugh, and you've tuned into Comedy History 101, where we school you in comedy. I am Harmon, hello, and Julie is the producer and writer of the new documentary, Are We Good? The documentary follows comedian/podcast legend Marc Maron and features such comedy icons as John Mulaney, David Cross, W. Kamau Bell, Laurie Kilmartin, Gary Goldman. The list goes on and on. And the documentary is available on Apple Plus and will be screening later this month at the Manchester Film Festival in the UK. And we will do a deep dive into the documentary and the life and career of said Marc Maron. But before we jump into the episode, a few quick plugs. On Thursday, March 19th, 7 p.m. at Young Ethels in Park Slope, I'll be presenting my show, That 80s Improv Challenge. Yes, 3 teams compete by creating scenes based on obscure videos from the 1980s. And it's a special theme night. It's Action Hero and Pee Wee Herman edition. Yes, all the scenes will be based on either Action Hero or Pee Wee Herman videos from the 1980s. And on March 26th, 7 p.m. at the Players Theater in the Village, I'll be presenting my show, AI versus Human Roast Battle. Come out and see a machine learning AI take on a human rapper in a comedy roast battle of tomorrow. And the following night, on March 27th, 7:30 at the Red Room above the KGB bar in the Lower East Side, I'll be presenting my show, Tale. No hokey gimmicks, no dumb themes. Tale brings you the best in New York storytelling. And you can find out all about my show dates on my site, harmonleon.com, or on the social medias, at Harmon Leon. Also, my friends, take some time to like, subscribe, comment, give us no less than 5 stars on Spotify, iTunes. Show your love of Comedy History 101 because we love bringing you such great episodes as the one we have today. And you can check us out on our site, comedyhistory101.com, or on Instagram, comedyhist101. And now, without further ado,
You're stupid. Everybody's so stupid.
I'm trying to use the phone!
excuse me! Comedy History 101. When did Marc Maron first come on your radar?
Oh, goodness.
And two parts. Second part of that question, what was your first reaction?
To knowing him. I mean, I've known Marc Maron probably since I discovered comedy, which was around 2002 when I was in my senior year of college at the University of Missouri. Dave Attell came and did a show at Jesse Auditorium. And I had been writing about film and music prior to that, but that's when I discovered comedy. And it all came rushing into me at once as this is what I'm supposed to be writing about. So that's all at the same time when I discovered not only Attell, but, Doug Stanhope, Mitch Hedberg, all those people who have really stuck with me for now 20 plus years. And just seeing how to be a comedy artist in a lot of ways. Maron was definitely one of those. I've been writing about him for at least 15 of those years back in New York. I think the first outlet would have been way back in the Village Voice times.
Oh, well, for where? The Luna Lounge days or before?
No, not quite that, but around, we'll call it the late aughts. The late 2000s, right about when WTF would have been starting in 2009, around that same time. He was always a more New York neurotic, deep thinking guy, but he was also someone who could bridge different scenes. Like he was in the club world, he was always at the Comedy Cellar, but like you said, he was also the Luna Lounge guy. He was an alt guy as well. And I know he doesn't like putting himself into different camps like that, but he was doing it all. And everyone knew him as a unique individual. And with all of the emotions that comes with. He didn't have a lot of super close comedy friends, and that still continues today, but there's reasons why that is. And I think if you look at all comedians and really drill down to what's behind the material, you'll find some of the most fascinating people you will ever find with amazing stories. And I just love telling those stories behind the comedy. And he's just a prime example of that.
Yeah. And as far as your niche go, why comedy as your niche rather than say music, art, or not say comedy isn't art, but other niches that aren't comedy or music?
Yeah. I personally, every time I can, I'm like, comedy is the most important art form there is.
The old wing fools. Truth to power.
Truth to power, yeah. It pushes society forward in a lot of ways. Other art can't. It's much more in the moment. You get feedback instantly. Comedy is something that, and I kind of alluded to it already earlier, but it is such a huge theme for me in all of my work of wanting to use comedy to survive. We need to be able to laugh at things that can hurt us, that can keep us down, derail us in some ways, keep us alive. I'm pretty sure comedy's kept me alive on numerous occasions, because when you can laugh at something, it takes away that power to really destroy you. Yeah. And if you're sitting in a live audience, and this is why I always prefer live stand-up to anything recorded, you're in this room with all these different strangers who knows why they're there, different, backgrounds, religions, who knows why they're there, but we all want to laugh, and when we can laugh at the same thing in the same moment.
Yeah,
and
you're connected. You're connected with this room of strangers, and the connecting tissue is the laughter.
Yeah, leaving a show like that where we've all laughed and got out those chemicals and we did it as a group, that's the thing that always makes me more optimistic about the world than anything. It doesn't necessarily last long, but I think a full room that's just laughing at the same thing in the same moment is something we can keep in mind to kind of foster empathy in a lot of ways for our fellow humans. Like nothing unites us like comedy has the potential to do.
Hear, hear. Thus the podcast Comedy History 101 and the laughter through the history of comedy. And when did the documentary come about? And when did you hook up with Stephen? Am I pronouncing his name correctly? Fine Arts?
Yeah, so Stephen Fine Arts has been directing specials out of LA for a while. And this is my second documentary. I also did Too Soon Comedy After 9/11 about telling jokes.
There we go. I see it. Yep.
About the comedians who were telling jokes in the days, weeks, months, years after 9/11. Again, how we used comedy to heal. Well, that Maron was also in that documentary as well. So I knew him from writing about him and from that documentary. And when his partner, Lynn Shelton, died in May 2020, only a couple months into the pandemic, I knew that this was a opportunity to see Maron in a way that few have. I had met Lynn previously, actually, when I pitched Too Soon to Maron. So I had been in her presence and just knew how much she really did change him for the better. His life, especially personally, had been pretty tumultuous up to that point. Bad partners, bad relationships, some of it him. And it was very clear that she was someone he'd finally found, and he felt that life was going to be okay from here on out. So when he lost that, I knew instantly that someone should put a camera on this guy. It was still middle of pandemic. And so this was, kind of building in my mind for a couple months. And I was thinking about the Seinfeld documentary Comedian, where he's putting together an act from scratch. I was thinking about the Aristocrats documentary where Paul Provenza and
Good old Provenza.
Camera and just do it. Just do it. So I developed the idea by myself, brought in Fine Arts to partner with because I knew Maron would yell at him on camera.
Which he does, like, right from the get-go.
That plan,
he almost seems really annoyed at the idea that there's a documentary being filmed about him.
Yeah, which I knew that shows an element to him that you can't get just through interviews. It's the action.
Yeah.
And I knew that was fully going to happen, and I was very correct.
The opening, sorry, not to disrupt the train of thought here, but the opening scene where he's backstage, was that the first night you filmed?
That was one of the first. We went May 7th, 2021 to the Comedy Store, which was the first night Maron came back. Pandemic. The store had been open about a week, and Maron had been saying on all his social media that he's quitting comedy and moving to Canada. The Canada part is still tentatively happening, but I knew the quitting comedy.
All right, guys, Mulaney says, what are you just going to be a guy in Vancouver?
Yeah. I know at this point that a lot of things he says might not turn out that way.
Yeah.
And that was the thing. Yeah. Just getting a camera on him, I knew was the most important thing, and he would realize the value of it. So it was probably that scene, might have been even late May, early June. We did a handful of those, and then he started going on the road. Denver was the first date of that summer. The actual filming production part was about 3.5 years total. And yeah, finally came out after all that time. It's now on Apple, Amazon Prime. It's now working its way into the UK market. It'll be at the Manchester Film Festival this month on March 29th. And yeah, that's a long-winded way of saying, boy, that was a labor of love.
Yeah, was the intent of the story arc, was that always there? I mean, am I wrong to say it's, comedy through grief? How can you love other people if you don't love yourself? You know,
Main
if you had to
question.
take away the comedy as storyline of it, these are, the threads also running through.
Yeah, I knew that right at the beginning, the story that I wanted to tell for sure of not only how did he get to this point of meeting Lynn and being on the cusp of being quote unquote happy.
Yep.
How did he get to that point so we can then see how she did actually change him? And you want to know, is he going to be this new person that she, kind of propelled him to be? She gave him a lot of belief in his acting ability, music, all that kind of stuff. The career we see him having now is a direct influence from her for sure. And we kind of leave the question a little open-ended of, is he a better person now? Is he? But you can kind of tell from the context clues of where he kind of settles. But again, this is married. Who knows what's going to happen next? It was basically this time frame of we're going to see this guy put together the most difficult material of his life. I knew it was going to be great. It's kind of getting stuff he's ever done. And that was the story, It doesn't have to be a whole biopic situation. There's still a lot more of his career and life to have.
Yeah. Just like a history of his podcast is a documentary in itself.
Yeah, this is a story of, a guy with a comedy voice who is highly watchable, and this is how he dealt with grief, and hopefully the rest of us can get something out of it too.
I lost a person I loved at the beginning of the pandemic.
I was more comfortable with myself, when I was, with her somehow.
I don't know how to talk about some of the stuff that I went through. I don't even know if it's appropriate to do it. When do I write a joke? When does the funny happen?
I'm clearly dealing with grief and sadness by, overcompensating with anger and funny.
If you don't like my tone, it's a character I'm working on. It's called Me Half the Time.
And what did you learn about his sort of joke or material cultivating process that you might have not known before the documentary? Because you, again, mentioned the Seinfeld documentary of cultivating an act from nothing. What did you learn about Maron's sort of, material cultivating process?
Yeah, he really is in the moment. It's fascinating to watch him quote unquote write because a lot of it happens on stage in the moment as he's interacting with people in a way that he doesn't. He's more honest with everyone on stage in a lot of ways than he is with his interpersonal relationships, but that's where the art comes from, exactly. And so kind of seeing him, experimenting on stage with this might be too far, this might be a little too dark, this is a little too sad even. There was the material with Lynn, but also his father who has dementia becomes a larger character as the documentary goes on. And he has a lot of onstage material about his father dealing with dementia and Martin dealing with the dementia too. So just kind of seeing where the line gets drawn for him in terms of audience feedback. But he still pushes every time. Because when you're that kind of a comedy artist and you know what you need to say, it's just a matter of tweaking it the right way. So it was really fascinating to see set to set of the leaps and bounds he was making in material, or stepping back a little bit and, really pushing the boundaries of how emotional can a comedian be before it might get a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, and he's confrontational to audience in the doc, particularly hecklers. Was there anything you left out where the confrontation just uncomfortable?
I wouldn't say
But again, it's also says something about his fans that they will go on the journey. But was he always playing in front of people that knew him, or was like sometimes this is you go to the generic label of comedy at a comedy club. Let's go see some comedy because we like comedy, and it's always it's like saying that let's go see music at a music club. Yeah,
exactly.
Was there different reactions or things where he wasn't with his fans?
Yeah, I would say certainly some of the smaller shows in LA, maybe even younger shows at this point. Like we were at what was it, Record Bar Offbeat? What's the name of that place? Way over on the east side, where they had Cool Kids Club filming, and those audiences were very young, and they looked at him like, what's this old dude rambling on about? But when you hit Moon Tower Festival,
right,
Jake Bell, he has his own gala show. You can see all the different layers of, again, like if I'm at a comedy club, I want to look around and see what people are laughing at. And this was definitely in full display for sure, of younger fans maybe getting their first glimpse of this kind of alternative forebear to the biggest gala in comedy possible. Do you see deals with these different things? Again, it's all just in the service of, making the best material possible. And that's how you can kind of tell what hits most authentically with people, I think.
Yeah, and I love like all those moments backstage when, like, say, local MC on stage, doing, say, horrible Ray Romano jokes. Or even the comedian at the beginning where that guy's just da-da-da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da.
I know what comedian that is, and he's...
Yeah, could you tell us?
Well, I actually...
Could you tell us by not telling us? And
Papa. I actually told Tom Papa that one.
Tom Papa, okay, right.
Podcast.
Yeah.
Like, by the way, you're in the film at the very beginning in a... I think it's a flattering way.
Yeah, it doesn't say he's bad. You just say his rhythm.
Yeah.
It's hypnotizing, which is part of the thing, to have a hypnotizing rhythm.
Maron has thoughts on a lot of comedy, and if he's thinking about you,
yeah,
that's kind of a compliment in its own way. If he feels threatened or like he might not be the best comic in the room, I'm all for that.
Yeah, so those moments are probably just always his inner monologue, but he had a chance to relay his inner monologue to the camera.
Yeah.
But he's backstage.
Which again, the old that old rule of show don't tell. Just let it roll, and he will be himself, and you can glean a lot of insight from that you're not going to get just from a normal, straight up sit down interview.
And what was your process? Like, what's your research process or interview style process when, putting this together and working with Steven?
Gosh, yeah, I would put myself in a category of being a hyper-focused person.
Mm-hmm.
So I will sit down with my subject matter and think about it for all the hours, all the days, every little detail, full picture, full scope, put it all in one place. And then you winnow it down from there of what the story's going to actually be. I think every little detail, no matter how big or small, can potentially, help tell those stories. So yeah, I'm more of a macro gatherer, and then winnowing it down. I had the full, transcripts of all three of his books, the full biographical timeline that I put together, all the archival. I did all the archival, and it's really just kind of putting it into an organizational format of what tells this the best thing. And with Maron, there's no lack of any information whatsoever. We had to cut out his entire time spent in San Francisco because it just didn't really necessarily fit, and stuff like that, where you can go chronological, but then at certain points, if the thematic takes over, you have to know when those situations are going to be, and just kind of assess it all in terms of the best storytelling. There was nothing really there were a couple things that he wasn't comfortable with showing just because he was, they were from when he was younger and maybe more erratic.
But other than that, such as like comedy clips, like say
more the
I'd love to see that. I mean, that's how again,
where he was maybe in more of a Hicks or a Dennis Leary kind of phase.
Yeah, you have that one clip like when he came to Boston. I was thinking, oh, he doesn't have his clear voice yet because he just sounds like Bill Hicks.
Exactly.
Talking about smoking and like Dennis Leary, who actually got it from Hicks, and yeah.
Yes. Yeah. This is the Comedy History Podcast. Exactly. There was some of that stuff where he just felt uncomfortable watching himself in earlier versions, but that was really it. Everything else.
So you felt he was pretty open. He wasn't holding back on anything. And again, we all know partly these stories because he's very open on his podcast, and he's unguarded on his podcast about the moments of his life.
And it really is fascinating because the podcast, it's very clear to me, is when he has been his most open with other people. And he even said this when the podcast ended, surprisingly, to all of us last year. There goes my social life.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he was doing like 2 a week and, somewhere in the can beforehand, but,
But even
that is just the social element of it.
Yeah. Also just thinking that that's his social element when he recognizes when his own fans have parasocial relationships with him. So it's interesting that he also has had parasocial relationships with his podcast guests. Like, these aren't your friends. You're just...
Yeah, he always goes on about Josh Brolin.
Yeah, and it's I know right now he's he's being a 60-year-old man and trying to calm down and trying to reap sort of a, I don't know, let's call it a spiritual reward for those 60 years and just be who he is without as much of that pressure or being quoted in reactions to things of the nonstop cycle of they said this and they said this and our current quote unquote journalism landscape, which I don't even really participate in anymore. So yeah, I haven't really checked in with him super hardcore since the podcast ended, but I think we're all just hoping that he's finding some peace and relaxing a little bit for what might be the first time in his life ever.
And he said he started the podcast like mostly to make amends with people he felt he wronged or burnt bridges with. Do you find that? Is that accurate?
That was definitely what he said about the earliest episodes. Who knows if that actually worked? I mean, there's even people, that he said stuff about in the documentary, his opinions of some other comedy people that maybe started things up again. I personally put him on a certain neurological spectrum where if you put his entire career and behavior into that context, it makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, just talk about that. Like, what do you think is like the source of anxiety and kind of self-defeating? And I'm not as good as everyone, like my friends Conan and John Mulaney, as he says. Where is that all coming from, do you think?
I mean,
other than like his upbringing and his relationship with his family.
Most comedians, I'm working on this theory, that most comedians are here for those reasons. We can, and I'm not even a comedian, but I'm in this world and I fully understand why I'm in this world. That there is this need to make sense of the chaos through this form of laughing at it. And putting yourself in this position to get approval in ways that you can't achieve in normal life. I think that can all be traced to, I'll find myself any night sitting around a table of, I'm pretty sure at this point, about 99% sure that I would fall under autism, and there's an ADHD person, and this one's OCD, and this one has fucking Tourette's. And I'm like, we're all, okay, I get it now. We're all here for a reason. He doesn't necessarily agree with that. He keeps saying, I'm not autistic. I'm not ADHD. That's not what it is. Because here's what's happening in my brain. And then goes on to describe autism. So
yeah,
I'm still going to put him somewhere. He doesn't necessarily believe that. That's not really an answer we're necessarily digging down to prove one way or another, but these things do affect how people, especially comedians, live in the world. When you line it up, it starts to all make sense and really, I think, elevate the art form even further, in my opinion. This is how hardcore artists need to communicate. They always will. It's not going to change. And there's reasons for that. So I think if we explore that a little more and kind of gain that empathy, again, it can help us go out into the world and change the way we think about it, really.
And what do you think made him such, again, he's complaining about his friends like Conan and John Mulaney, but yet he is one of the major pioneers of the podcast space, who pretty much is up there with, making the genre what it is today, or the medium what it is today.
Yeah, it is actually a sore spot for him that he did become more known for the podcast than for his stand-up, per se.
I don't think my stand-up ever really kind of like breaks the ceiling. But it's a life of that, and I'm tired.
I have nothing to lose anymore. Actually, I have a lot to lose. Let's do it anyway.
I haven't even listened to all the WTFs. It's more just stopping in, to keep track of what's happening, or if it's a specific guest that's being used for in a project at that time. But yeah, he started in the fall of 2009. There was only a handful of podcasts at that time. None of them were really making, livable money. He was on Keith and the Girl.
I think I've been on that podcast.
Yeah, he was
they're up in Astoria, I think.
There's a picture of Keith and the Girl right there.
Oh, okay, right, yeah.
Yeah, he was also in Astoria at that time, and he didn't really know what he was going on, but they kind of explained what it was, and this was at the time when Air America was dwindling after its very short-lived run, also in the early aughts, the 2000s. And so I think the timing was right for him to now finally knew what he was doing with radio, and he could combine the intimacy of what's behind the material into this form that again allows him to have a quote-unquote social life.
Yeah.
But yeah, he wasn't quite the first, but one of the first who really did put it on the map as a success in comedy in a lot of ways.
And what do you think makes him a good interviewer?
Gosh, yeah. As someone who's done, all the research for comedy that is possible of me, I definitely do think it made him look at people as, more their own entities as opposed to just, side characters in your own drama. And having these conversations with people that you're probably never going to see again does allow you to dig in quickly in a way that you would not otherwise be able to do, and take those lessons and get out again. And so you don't have to do the maintenance of keeping up with these relationships. You can kind of find the best parts and roll from there. It really is, something that I think made him more cognizant of, the effects of negative personal reactions and your own shortcomings, and really kind of also at the same time see more of what people have to offer. So I would say it definitely opened his worldview. If it permanently changed anything with him, I'm not sure, because again, he's hopefully being calm and happy and still thinking of moving to Vancouver at the moment, but I haven't seen him for a couple months, and I'm guessing it's a bit more of going back into his hermit cave again.
And what in the documentary that you wish you would have kept in that ended up getting cut?
Ooh, yeah, that's a good one. We really did kind of go to the line in terms of really expressing and showcasing his emotions he was going through at the time. There was maybe a political clip that was anti-Trump, but I think we all agreed that didn't really need to be in there. You don't need to open a can of worms in this scenario.
Right.
I think that was really the biggest one. There's a couple things that I think could have been done better. But again, being a DIY doc, you do what you can with budget and hope you're conveying things correctly. But yeah, it's definitely very, very, very close to my original vision of it in a lot of ways. It may be just a little more money.
Yeah.
But
I'd
other than
hear
that,
more about I actually did an episode on the Comedy Store house where he lived with Sam Kinison and Andrew Dice Clay lived there and Yakov Smirnov. Imagine that. And I was just like fascinated with that house where him and Sam Kinison were doing massive amount of drugs.
yeah. And Kinison peed on Maron's bed.
Yeah, because
he was mad one night.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was being hazed, basically. We can call it that.
Right.
But also, again, like you said, doing all the drugs and had sort of a psychic breakdown, and that was the first time he got clean. Didn't take that time, but he did later. Yeah, the Crestwood house is definitely a point of fascination for all the stories that could happen there. Even Mitzi Shore, there's been a Comedy Store documentary that I think should have focused on Mitzi. Yeah. I saw a little too much Mike Binder and not enough Mitzi in it. So maybe that's. I'd love to remake that one day out of just spite. Just basically, I'm just remaking it. But that kind of stuff is endlessly fascinating. I've said it already on this podcast, but I think comedy pushes society forward in a lot of ways that other art forms don't. And the stories of how all that stuff happened, I think, is more important than getting a pull quote of some joke that you laugh. I think how comedy makes you think is more important big picture than every single laugh right at the moment.
Yep. It was good to see Gallagher in there. This director made this documentary on Gallagher, which was really great because Gallagher is a complicated person, to say the least. But I went back and I listened to that episode, and I kind of almost siding on Gallagher's side that Merritt was sort of just off because you're quote unquote the guest, and Merritt just started laying into him. But I think it was like both sides might have been at fault. But I think Maron in later years admitted to maybe he didn't take the correct approach.
Yeah, I mean that's what happens when powerful comedy personalities come into contact. It's not just Gallagher. I would put some of this down to autism, but social interactions can be challenging, and you see it and play out in exactly that same way. I actually I heard there's a Gallagher documentary coming too.
No,
I'll check that.
Yeah, I interviewed the director. I think it came out in at a film festival. It might have been Doc NYC, but it's a really great documentary because you have Gallagher and you have the feud between Gallagher and Gallagher 2, and then you have the rise and then the fall of Gallagher, where it's just it's really good.
There it is. Yeah. Okay, so that was from the late last. It's called Gallagher documentary.
Yeah. I've seen it like maybe 3 times.
Bill Burr's in it, Howie Mandel, Bobcat, Carrot Top. I need to get Carrot Top for a Hedberg project. If the Gallagher documentary can get Carrot Top, so can I.
Yeah, so just a few last questions here. What was the most you laughed during filming, either when the cameras are rolling or when they weren't rolling?
Oh, gosh. Such a good one. I think just really whatever.
His pants were falling down?
Yeah, that's a good one. The general answer is Mark just being Mark. Certainly the pants falling down is part of Mark. And I know at this point what all of his moods are based on the pants he's wearing. He has a certain pair of fat pants. So if he's wearing those, he's in a bad mood. There's the falling down ones. There's the brown ones that don't stay zipped. And that's when he's like, oh, I know his pants way too well. But yeah, just little stuff like that of just letting him be himself. Oftentimes it will spiral. He'll get frustrated, but pull himself back at the end. And that's just the typical, like, yeah, that's the Maron we love. He's endlessly watchable. He's always going to play up. Even when he's yelling at the camera, he knows how to play up for it to be as watchable as humanly possible. So he'll complain about it the whole time, and yet that's what we love about him. So I think it was really just seeing a lot of those things fall into place. Or like when he's outside the Comedy Store talking to Jeff Ross about, their background in Boston and stuff, and then just goes inside and laughs at his headshot. Like, this is the Maron. Like, this is him, warts and all. And I think when he's being his best, like the stuff that goes on behind the scenes, where he's trying to become the person that he wants to be on the stage, I think is the most telling and just, gut-inducing. This is why we're here, to laugh at our flaws.
And what did you learn about him through the whole process, which was, 5 years of filming?
Yeah, ultimately from the idea to the release, the whole thing was 5 years. Filming itself, actually about 3.5. What did I learn about him? Gosh, that it's still something in comedians' brains that as much as they do want to be vulnerable and provide the best, most emotional material possible, with someone like him, you're still never 100% necessarily going to break through those walls. And we have him being as vulnerable as possible, and yet off, it's not the same. So there's always going to be a guard wall for the best.
I think that's just like what you said about comedians is like, and I've talked to a lot of comedians about this, is like, you can share the most intimate thing to a group of strangers on stage with amplification equipment and lighting than you can off stage.
Yep. Off stage, try to talk to him one-on-one, it can be challenging. It still is. I'm still even a little miffed at some things that happened. Let's be real. And yet, the product is this very fascinating portrait of this guy at this particular time. I'm never going to get the whole person. It's not going to be possible. But for this historical work about comedy that happened in this space and time, it's almost possibly as good as it can be. Yet offstage, these people are never going to be fully, you have to still take it all with a bit of a grain of salt. That's kind of where the magic is, though. Like no human being is fully knowable to their fans, to people who work with them, to even themselves.
How about to his cats? Do his cats probably know him best?
Probably, yeah. We should have done more interviews of cats. Yeah. I mean, we did get some great shots of their kind of reaction to him around the house. And let's be honest, the cats were some of the most popular parts of the film. The cats tested very, very well in this documentary. It's always like, we love the cats, more cats, and Maron crying is great.
And what did you learn about his fans, or how obsessive do his fans get? Because again, it's like podcasting, it's such an intimate, medium, because you're literally inside people's heads where they feel like they know you, and it's like you don't really know them. Your fan.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, and that is the side of that parasocial relationship he even like mentions in the doc. That is something we did take out, but it never really, it wasn't much of a choice for me. There was a couple crazy middle-aged ladies who did show up at different shows around the country. I'm saying this is a crazy middle-aged lady who also showed up around the country, but there's definitely some fans who did show up, and we would sometimes put them on camera, but to me it was just a little too sad and not something that I wanted to show. I was very adamant about that Like, this isn't a puff piece. This isn't, our fans are so great. And I don't give a fuck about fans. I do not care about fans.
Yeah.
How they see comedians. I think it's just the story about the artist. Anytime you're fans into the mix of storytelling, I could care less.
Yeah. I mean, I think whenever you're in the realm of fans making fan art of you, that's always
yeah. But again, that's exactly kind of what I did in a way too. And yet,
okay, right. No, I mean like an actual portrait. You know what I mean?
I can channel it into, a project. So say the things that I want to say, and I'm not just showing up in Denver or something with a Maron t-shirt. Hey, do you remember me from Lafayette? At least I'm not doing that. I'm putting it into good use of using my position of basically just being a professional comedy fan.
Yeah.
To really dive in deeper and just tell the stories that are more particularly interesting to me. If not, I would just be a crazy fan, if not.
Yeah. I have one funny Maron story. He always talks about that year he was in Edinburgh, and how horrible it was. So I was up there in Edinburgh the same year, and I knew him from like when he passed through San Francisco. And it was like, you see someone in a different country that it's like, so I went, hey, Mark, how's it going? And he just sort of rolled his eyes and went, oh, hi, Harmon. Like, with the tone of, oh, this is the last thing I need in the world for Harmon Leon coming up and saying hi to me. I think his podcast might have just started. So it was roughly around that. Yeah. But I just remember that as like, whoa. Which segues to, lastly, tell us what you're working on now.
So I'm currently in a producer position on another long-term labor of love about a comedian, Mitch Hedberg. We've been working on a documentary about him, also a labor of love for, it'll be 6 years when it comes out, tentatively later this year. Director Jeff Siegel approached me after my Mitch Hedberg oral history appeared on SiriusXM in November of 2020. And he's the biggest Mitch Hedberg I've ever found next to me. I thought I was the biggest one. We also have EP and producer Michael Blyden, who's kind of comedy royalty for doing the comedian's comedy, and Zach live at the Purple Onion, and EP Jack Vaughn, who founded Comedy Central Records, produced all of Mitch's albums. It's all people who knew him firsthand, and we want to tell like a true authentic story from all the pieces that exist before the internet, before social media, because Mitch died in March of 2005, and YouTube came out later that year. This is how far back we're talking about, living a life as basically a nomad, pure comedy artist, and piecing all this stuff together. All firsthand sources. We get about 130 people who want all their stories to be in one place. So it's going to be, the most fully definitive, kind of collaborative comedy community project. We can make it. We've been to all the clubs, all the bookers, all the owners, all the comedians he knew. Think of a name, they're in there, except for widow Lynn Shawcroft. She does not want to be part of it. But yeah, basically coming later this year, everybody but Lynn, but she knows the door is open to her at any point in time. And it's just that white whale story that no one has been able to do for 20 years now. Lots have tried, lots have failed. We're going to actually make this Mitch labor of love happen at tentatively some point later this year.
I can't wait to see it. Where can people find the documentary, the Marc Maron documentary?
Are we good? The Marc Maron documentary is available in the U.S. on Apple, Amazon Prime. It's currently out making the rounds in the U.K. again. Like I said, it will be at the Manchester Film Festival later this month on March 29th. And yeah, you can kind of watch it if you like to really cry along with your comedy. If you like to get all the emotions out, this is definitely the doc for you to do it.
Well, I enjoyed it. Thank you so much. It's great talking to you.
Yeah, you too. We'll definitely talk again soon for sure.
All right. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Have a good one.
And And with that, we wrap up today's episode. Along with the few quick plugs, we'll go through this quick. Thursday, March 19th, 7 p.m. at Young Ethels in Park Slope, That 80s Improv Challenge. The following Thursday, March 26th, 7 p.m. at the Players Theater, AI versus Human Roast Battle. And on the following night, March 27th, 7:30 at the Red Room above the KGB bar, Tale, NYC's finest storytelling. No hokey gimmicks, no dumb themes. Tale brings you the best in New York storytelling. And you can find out all about my show dates on my site, harmonleon.com, or on the social medias at harmonleon. Also, show some love for Comedy History 101. Like, subscribe, comment on Spotify, iTunes. Give us no less than 5 stars. Show your love and support because we love bringing you such great episodes like the episode we brought you today. And until next time, bye.
You're stupid. Everybody's so stupid.
I'm trying to use the phone!
Comedy History 101.